And they turn him into this fucking orange buffoon. He's this ridiculous space Trump played by Mark Ruffalo, which is perfect casting if you want somebody who's going to talk down to the audience. Welcome to Pray for Rain. I am your host, Jack Willis. And I am so sick of politics infecting every aspect of our lives. No conversation, movie, sporting event, award show, or Instagram post is safe anymore. Everything and everyone has taken a stance on some political issue, and it's killing us. Even my dear, sweet grandparents will have NPR whispered into their ear canals every morning, and then they'll ask me something like, so what do you think about the House Committee on Finance reducing the budget for SNAP benefits? What? Am I supposed to immediately know how some niche part of the budget allocation process is going to impact Americans? Are we all supposed to know that? They could be cutting benefits for sex offenders for all I know. And God forbid that I don't agree with something Terry Gross said on Fresh Air, because then I'm in for a conversation that I didn't even want to have, really. And I like some NPR, but good Lord, does every one of us have to be a member on the UN Security Council now? Endlessly having to vote on every single issue? Can we abstain from some of this? And everyone has a story like this, or many, just times where you would have been much better served if the conversation didn't happen at all. And not only does every person need to express an opinion on every conceivable socio-political topic, but now every institution thinks that they need to take a stance because they feel that if they don't, they'll get some negative press online. They are all terrified of internet mobs coming after them, so they feel like they can't be silent. Every issue, they need to have a stance. And it's so unnecessary. Is it necessary to hear from the National Coffee Roasters Association of America, their stance on Ukrainian air defense spending? It's a dumb business practice, but it's also endless, because by feeling that you need to comment on this one particular issue, your silence on other issues causes a problem. What about your stance on police brutality or environmental regulations or the tax code? Why are you being quiet on that? It turns a business or a school or a club into a political institution. And we need fewer of those right now. Maybe we need more sane political institutions. I think this is most offensive to me in how ideology and politics are saturated in TV and movies. Because entertainment is primarily meant to take us out of our immediate reality, to let us escape for a couple of hours and just enjoy a story away from the culture wars. But no, we can't even have that anymore. Each movie has to make its stance known on contentious political issues, as if we didn't already know what the movie producers believed, or we weren't aware of the problem. If I wanted to know which part of the Constitution Donald Trump is shitting on at the moment, I'd be watching NBC and not HBO. Excuse me, sir. The thumbnail said this movie was about interstellar travel. And we know what's happening at a national level. It's not for lack of awareness. Have you ever seen human beings in the wild? Walk down any street in any city and you'll see all of us evolved apes looking straight down at our smartphones all the time. All the time. And the only time we might stop ingesting something from the internet is when we think we might get hit by a car. And sometimes not even then, because the crosswalks are still not safe from us looking at our phones. So we are very aware of what's happening. And furthermore, I am a moral agent in this world. I can draw my own conclusions from events, and I don't need you to shove whatever clunky progressive allegory down my craw in this movie. Thank you very much. And I would say the same thing about a conservative entertainment industry, if that existed, which thank God it doesn't, because I don't think those would be very compelling movies. And that's because blatant ideology of any stripe is hard to incorporate well into a story. And what drives me crazy is how heavy-handed it all is. Whenever you're watching a movie that has some ideological point it wants you to see, it's never subtle. You immediately understand what they're trying to do. Now, sometimes you agree with it and sometimes you don't, but it is blatantly obvious what's going on. Take the movie Conclave, for example. This is a more recent example, although I guess it's a couple of years old now. That movie was wonderfully compelling. It took us through the arcane and cutthroat procedures of electing a new pope. The cinematography was great. It was well cast, the tension, wonderful, had Ralph Fiennes, big fan of him. So it made for a great movie. And in that movie, the Archbishop of Kabul ends up being elected as Pope. A Mexican priest from Afghanistan is chosen as the new Pope. So they definitely got the diversity boxes checked there. But that's not the point. This man is obviously meant to be the moral avatar of the film. He is a peace-loving, pure, and good paragon of popely virtue, which I'm totally fine with. Filmmakers drawing lines around good and evil, that's standard operating procedure. But at this point, I love the movie. I've gone through almost all of it, and it's just a great story. And I think I am glad that I bought a ticket to Conclave. And then, with 3 minutes left in the film, it's revealed to us that the new pope happens to be one of like 4 intersex people on the planet. Out of fucking nowhere, they tell us this guy has a uterus, right as the movie is about to end. And it's clear what that's meant to represent. If you don't celebrate and support the trans movement and that ideology, you are part of the coalition of evil in this world. And this is during peak trans movement years, mind you, I think. And for the record, I don't really care what your stance is on the particulars. Believe whatever you want. But it had nothing to do with the internal logic of the movie. Totally ex nihilo, just out of nowhere. And it was an ideological sermon that they wanted to cram in to the end of the movie. The writers should have just left the for your consideration graphic on the screen during the reveal. That way, the Oscar committee didn't have to watch the whole movie. They could have just jumped straight to the most sanctimonious part, and it would have been ear tagged for them. They ruined a great story and brought us straight back to the culture wars. And this is actually the same thing that happened in Mickey 17. I think the director was Bong Joon-ho. He took this really interesting sci-fi concept based on the book Mickey 7. And the concept is that humans are trying to colonize a desolate, frozen world called Nilfheim. It's kind of a funny name for a world. And in order to do that, they have all these lethal maintenance jobs that the colony requires. And for those jobs, they use expendable labor. And that's where our protagonist, Mickey, comes in. He signs away his DNA so that every time he does one of these really lethal jobs and he dies, there's a new version of him that is reprinted. A new version of Mickey, say 7, 8, etc. And it's a ship of Theseus question. If they replace every part of you, are you still you? Or at what point are you you? Which is such a cool idea combined with space colonization. And Robert Pattinson does an interesting job with Mickey. He brings the energy for sure. But instead of treating us to a couple of hours of a First Contact style movie, the filmmakers decide to use it as a platform for some ideology. First, take the commander, who in the book is a serious but flawed character, and he is mostly a stern man trying to keep everyone from starving. And they turn him into this fucking orange buffoon. He's this ridiculous space Trump played by Mark Ruffalo, which is perfect casting if you want somebody who's going to talk down to the audience. It's going to be, or it has to be written in this guy's contract that he gets to take the stance on at least 3 political issues in every movie he does. Anyway, they neuter this character. All of the interesting and difficult choices a space colony commander might make about keeping his crew alive just evaporate because they turned his character into a space fascist who is obviously evil. And then there are the creepers. And the creepers are the hive-minded aliens that populate this planet. And in the book, they are a biological threat to be grappled with. Mickey and the humans are trying to suss out if they can coexist there or if there's going to be some sort of mutually assured destruction with these creatures, which again is a super interesting classic sci-fi idea. Like, do they mean to harm us? Do we kill them? Are they going to kill us? How do we cohabitate this planet? What do they want? And then ideology strikes again. The creepers aren't an alien prisoner's dilemma to solve, but actually an indigenous victims. The movie turns these bugs into moral, peace-loving victims of colonialism. And Mickey's peace girlfriend even has a scene where she's spittle-flecked screaming at Space Trump, "They were here first." They, meaning the hostile hive mind surrounding your colony on a frozen, hellish planet. They were here first, so we should just let them kill us or something like that. The director even invents this subplot where the Space Trump steals a cute little baby alien from the hive in order to turn it into a line of branded sauces, like sauces for eating. It was so weird. But this difficult set of survival choices the character would have had are totally deflated into shitty parody of actual political problems. We're not on planet Nilfheim anymore. We're actually back in Washington, D.C. We're back on Earth. Here you go. Thank you for buying a ticket. And let me tell you something. If I am the commander of a colony in deep space and there's a hive mind of intelligent bugs that are threatening to destroy my species, you better believe that I'm going to do everything I can to grind them into the fucking dust. I'm going to put Jericho missiles up the ass of every bug within a mile of camp. No question. It's done. Easy choice. Easy choice for the commander. I'm going to pick the humans. But I don't really care about what your stance is on the political or the particular issue. Well, I mostly don't care. But when ideology is just fuel injected into a movie, it almost always takes you out of the story and back to Twitter. It breaks the spell. And you know what I call that? I call that shitty storytelling. You've done the exact opposite of the thing your project was supposed to do for us all. Allow us to escape, to let us live someone else's life for a little while. Now, this doesn't apply to all movies because sometimes that is exactly the point. No one goes to see Milk with Sean Penn and was surprised to see that the movie is a championing gay rights the entire time. It's the point of the movie. But for your average movie and TV show, it's just so on the nose that it shatters the illusion. Even if you agree with the message, they're essentially breaking the fourth wall, and it's a sin most of the time. And just imagine if this was done in the other direction. Just imagine if the movie industry was dominated by conservative ideology. How sick would you get of every movie having an anti-abortion narrative? You're watching Glenn Powell and The Rock, Molotov Planned Parenthoods in movie after movie. Or the latest How to Train Your Dragon movie. They're teaching dragons why it's important to bring their dragon babies to term. Do you think you'd get sick of seeing that? Would that flow effortlessly into the plot? Again, some movies are explicit and honest about their intentions up front, but oftentimes It's just not done with any nuance or care for a story. And my God, it is exhausting. What's more is they're making these movies for people. They're making these movies for people that hold the exact same opinions as them. They're just jerking one another off, trying to virtue signal for the most part. Jesus. And you don't change the minds of people by lecturing at them. You change their minds by acknowledging there are multiple perspectives on a given issue, and that believing the opposite might not necessarily make the other person evil. That's a start, anyhow. And is it really speaking truth to power when your brave and profound allegory has a $200 million budget financed by Warner Brothers and a global distribution network? Your courage astounds me that you had to fight the dark forces to get this political message worked into this Oscar grab. But it keeps happening again and again. What happened to making a movie the whole family could enjoy, even grandpa and your questionable uncle? These studios are constantly preaching diversity. What about making things for people with diverse points of view? Even worse, what about for people who disagree with you on a particular point? That might be interesting. That might be diverse. But we don't get that. Rarely do we get that. I can't think of an example, a recent one, that has walked that line well. But what do we think would happen if we refrained from forcing more political messages in entertainment? Maybe, just maybe, not needing every piece of entertainment to have an ideological bend might allow us to connect a little bit more. Ever think that? Maybe we need shared cultural touch points more than we have ever needed them right now. We're being sorted into good and evil with clunky allegories that are ruining otherwise interesting stories. And I think we need to allow adults to draw their own conclusions from less political movies and TV. Now, there are, of course, shitty things to believe for stupid reasons, and we want to disabuse people of those beliefs. But there's a time and a place, and I, for one, am fucking sick of it being every single time I sit down to watch a movie. But further on this point of political sorting, one thing that I'll hear people talk about a lot is red versus blue states or cities. And everything is framed politically. Even our state's geography is framed that way. And most of the time, I just think it's so unproductive because I don't care who you are. If you were to vacation to most places in this country and you're polite to other people, they are usually kind to you. And that's probably because people tend to be nice in this country, unless they're otherwise immediately introduced in an adversarial way. If you go to a Cracker Barrel in Alabama with a tear down the patriarchy crop top on, you're not really signaling your willingness to be a great conversationalist. You're wearing a team jersey. You're flying the colors. And it's the same thing if you're walking around with a MAGA hat. You're not saying, I am just a human being. You're saying, I'm on this team. Immediately let me know if you're on the same one. Even dating apps have a filter for political affiliation now, which I think is pretty stupid. If you happen to get along with somebody without knowing their stance on the U.S. involvement in Ukraine, why would that matter? What could be further from how you two might actually interact on a daily basis than your point of view on the conflict in Kiev? I think some apps actually let you tag the social and political causes that you care about so you can have them exist on your profile. And it'll say that this person really values immigrant rights. And this is kind of off the beaten path. This is an aside, but it'll say that so this person values immigrant rights or disability rights or neurodiversity or whatever that is, whatever your cause du jour is. And there has never been a man in human history who has looked at a dating profile of a woman he found attractive and thought, no way I'm going out with her. She does not value neurodiversity. Men do not give a fuck about that, at least being displayed on your profile. There's no man alive who wouldn't date a woman because she's outwardly not showing a strong enough commitment to neurodiversity. But I digress. The reason that they allow you to select your political ideologies on a lot of different platforms, but on dating profiles too, is it's so that you feel like you're demonstrating what a good person you are. It's about you. And that's why politics bleeds into everything. We're expected to declare our affiliation everywhere and outwardly. Not that you can't value those things or it's bad to do so. If you want to be a champion of one of those causes of neurodiversity, that is great. Knock yourself out. But it's not really relevant to dating someone, that is, unless you are a political activist zealot, which is what all of this is pushing us to become, I dare say. Why is politics everywhere? Why can't we escape it? I think that a good amount of this is needing to signal moral status. It's a way of demonstrating that. It's about showing that we are virtuous and we are informed, oftentimes that we're more virtuous and informed than those around us, more pious. I'm flawed. I will do it. I try not to do it, but I'm sure I do in ways that I am not aware of. It's a human quality and a consequence of our times. But why do we feel like we have to fly the colors all the time? It seems to me like there are fewer actual opportunities for moral transcendence than there have been in the past. Religion is evaporating from much of the developed world, and the civil rights movement already happened. But we don't want to think that we missed the battle. We need greater meaning, and the traditional ways of finding that meaning are withering. I also think that a lot of us don't matter to as many people as we used to. We don't have as many quality connections, whether it's a church, a neighbor, a grocery store clerk. Well, everything is a chain store and everything is delivered to our homes now. But we have fewer clubs, fewer associations. And when we have more free time, less to fight for, and fewer people who need us, we create our meaning through political struggle. And if religion and the fight for socio-political equality were two legs of that stool that we have been sitting on for a long time, the third leg is culture. And culture is being eviscerated by the internet. The internet has eroded our shared cultural narratives to an alarming degree. Think about the sheer number of Instagram posts or TikToks or tweets someone can see in a day. Think of how many Instagram posts or TikToks you saw today. Actually think about it. Was it 500? Was it 600? Was it 1,000? Was it more than that? There is a metric ton of information coming at us. Now, think about how wild it is that two people that each see 1,000 pieces of content or info online a day might not see one shared piece of information. They might not see the same thing. Social media addicts who will just never cross paths on the internet. That's pretty wild. The political seepage is also happening because we just catastrophize everything. Everything is a catastrophe. And when we do that, when we catastrophize something, it drives up the collective temperature. It just gives us permission to break the rules and norms in ways we wouldn't normally do because the stakes are so high, or we project them to be that way, which in turn gives the other side, or whoever that is for you, permission to do the same thing, to break the norms again, because again, we are in a political environment of emergency. And when this happens, it gives us the man from The Apprentice as the president and a literal socialist as the mayor of New York City. Now, there are, of course, political decisions made by our government that affect us and the rest of the world at large. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be concerned about those things. But just try and think of how often those decisions have directly impacted your daily life. Think about it for a second. Can you name 3 decisions by the federal government that actually made a material change in the way you have lived your life? Not your emotional state or what you thought might happen or how you felt, but 3 major policies, big policy decisions that prevented you from living your life that day. I don't think I can, at least not off of the top of my head. There's probably some obscure tax credit that I can or I can't claim. But other than that, I struggle to think of a single great example, a thing that had a direct effect on my daily life, of living my life. Yes, there are economic policies that affect us, but those tend to be pretty complex and slow moving. My point isn't that we should ignore terrible and dumb things that happen at the heights of government, because God knows there are a lot of them right now. But rather, that we tend to overestimate the political decisions, the impact of political decisions that will have on us that come from the federal level at a national level. There's probably some geriatric at a local city council who actually has more power to make my life living hell than anyone at a national level. He can rezone my backyard and implode my property value. That's the guy that I should be worried about. It feels like our boredom is making every political fight feel existential, and our time online makes us see it everywhere. Twitter has become the shadows on the wall of the cave, and I, for one, am so sick of it. We need to have avenues of political life free from politics for the sake of our sanity. It doesn't have to feel like we're at war all the time. And that starts by not making a battlefield of everywhere. I'm going to try and not engage with some of this stuff as much, to let the argument pass me by on the internet, or to say, that's interesting, but I really don't feel like talking about politics right now. Do you see the new Game of Thrones? That's interesting. Let's talk about that. And now I will end with my favorite sentiment, which is that things are actually better than the internet makes them seem. And people are usually kind in real life. And if we create more spaces free from political ideology, then it will allow us to connect with others more. And I think we will all be much better off. That's it for me. So until next time, I am praying